They were choking on their chowder in Beantown. I'm sure the
Yeah.
Celtic backers were all feeling the same amount of pain. In fact, I think there was a sighting of Samuel Adams himself standing by the shores of the beach, hoping for a riptide to just wash him away out to the horizon there in the frigid waters off of New England. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to another edition of the Morning Briefing. I'm Jeff DeForest along with Mike Lubitz. We'll have that whole story for you and the way that we saw things as the Miami Heat prevailed by 10 points over the Boston Celtics on the road last night. Everybody was writing their epitaph, their obituary. But if you were betting the game, we have the ideal spot for you to do it. BetOnline is your number one source for all your summer sports this season, from MLB, golf, NBA, and NHL playoff stats. All the latest stats, news, and scores available for you to follow your favorite teams. Get the latest odds and lines, including the latest team matchups, player props, and odds on just about every sport out there, and there's a lot going on. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to get in on all the action. Bet Online, where the game starts.
I feel like if you were on Bet Online last night on the Heat, you're very happy today.
Money line on this thing was 8-1. We often talk about two-word groupings that can be especially painful. One of which, of course, and the major one would be I do. Me being 0 for 2 with a walk in terms of marriages. And Lubie, you had one that wasn't exactly the stairway to heaven that you thought it was going to be. I do is particularly troubling as a two-word grouping because we all know this. Everything changes once she says I do. Everything. It goes right out the window. All the love, the romance, all the intentions, all of the dreams, whoosh, shattered in an instant. Of course, market price is tough. Lubie and I happen to do a local restaurant show here in South Florida, and we know all about market price. There are a lot of complaints about that. You're thinking to yourself as the server is quoting you a price on the special that is listed at market price, what the fuck market did you go to buy that piece of fish? You couldn't have had something shipped in from Tijuana? It's a lot cheaper. I prefer that you shop at the black market if you're going to charge me market price. Ugliness, two-word groupings, total ugliness. And of course, anybody that goes to the racetrack knows that the ugliest two words you could group together are steward's inquiry. Unless, of course, you happen to lose the race with your usual lousy handicapping approach, and somehow, by the luck of the draw, some horse bumped into another one in the middle of the stretch, and you get put up. But that's a rarity, people. That's a rarity. But how ugly was this? Anybody that walked up to any desk in any casino, any window in any casino last night, and said, Heat, money line. That's one of those ones where they call off to the side there, like we often reference. Hey, Lou, we got one here.
Yeah.
And they pull you aside in a jacket that ties in the back, and they have you subjected to psychiatric examination because you won't be allowed to bet again if you're going to be that freaking Meshuggah, if you're going to be that crazy. But we know this, and this was the reason that those 15 points, I think it went off at 14 points, Lubie, but did that not look very generous? I mean, if you had given the Washington Generals 14 points against the Celtics last night, I'd been inclined to go ahead and say, hey, you know what? This Red Klotz can really coach. And that's true of Eric Spoelstra. Did you realize that he threw in a bunch of Coke machines at the practice facility? And he said, we're just going to hoist them from beyond the Coke machine all night long, and the Celtics won't be able to stop it. But that had to be one of the shockers of all time in at least early round playoff action. Unbelievable stuff happening last night as the Heat win by 10 points and destroy virtually everybody. You had to think in Boston that they have to be going nuts tonight, Lubie, because there was this theory out there, and it was one that you were a huge advocate of, that the Boston Celtics were a fraud all along, that Robert Parrish was not going to be walking through that door. Larry Bird was not going to be walking through that door. You go back to not only your father's Celtics, but your father's Celtics. Or the Celtics that I watched, where you got like Bill Russell and Sam Jones, an invincible team. Hondo Havlicek is coming off the fucking bench. That was the kind of advantage that the Celtics appeared to have over the Miami Heat last night, who were without Jimmy Butler, who's going to be out for a while, and without Terrence Rozier, a guy who came in during the course of the season and did a nice job of showing up the Heat's normally somewhat anemic offensive efforts. But big upset last night in that basketball game. And I think it was a surprise to virtually everybody. You almost had to think this was like the War of the Worlds, the old Orson Welles thing. When you wake up this morning and you hear people broadcasting, whether you're getting it on radio or TV, or God forbid, you're an ancient Stone Age person and you actually get a newspaper and you're reading Heat 111, Celtics 101. What was it? 110, 100? A 10-point victory by the Miami Heat. Do they have a chance to win the series? We were Talking to a guy that knows more about the Miami Heat than I think just about virtually anybody. This guy knows what Pat Riley had for breakfast on a Thursday in April last year. He could tell you, yeah, it was the poached eggs with the toast. They had rye toast, slightly not burnt. And even he was saying yesterday on one of our shows that the Heat had virtually no chance, that this was going to be one of the biggest blowouts in the history of basketball. It was going to be a sweeperoo. So a real shocker there, Mike Lubie Lubitz.
Yeah, look, can they win again? I mean, look, it's 1-1. They actually controlled the entire game from pretty much start to finish and won by double digits. And they're going home. And you would think the tertiary guys who played well last night would play even better at home. So can they win? Yeah, I mean, I'm not picking them to win. I don't think they'll win. The Boston other guys probably will play a little better. And I don't think they're going to shoot that well from three, probably again in the series. But look, they have the better coach. They have a guy that's widely regarded as the best coach in the game. And it's a team he's coached 4 years now. It's a team he's coached to the NBA Finals twice. So he knows his team. He knows what he's working with. And they've added in a Jaquez. They've added in a Jovic, guys that can do everything on both ends of the floor. Things that a guy like Eric Spoelstra thirsts to have. And Tyler Hero played like the Tyler Hero that we thought was a centerpiece of a trade for Damian Lillard.
You think Joe Cronin, the Portland Trailblazers general manager, was looking at Jaquez Jr. and Tyler Hero last night and saying, you know what, I'm glad I got those stiffs whose expiring contracts were so attractive to us in the deal for Damian Lillard, instead of the people that were being offered supposedly by the Heat, who definitely had to be happy with the idea that maybe these guys really aren't as expendable as they might have thought. But yeah, that was a huge turnaround. And if you had the Heat on the money line, 8-1 last night, Mike Lubie Lubitz, 8-1 is a pretty good number. You don't see that. The NBA is very much a chalk league, especially early in the postseason. 1 versus 8. You thought that the Heat would take a game somewhere in the series. I don't know that anybody thought that they would win that one outright last night. But the 15 was a big enticement. 15 points. You can't give any NBA team, a playoff team, 2 touchdowns and expect to prevail. So the chalk players definitely were eating it. And the people that had the bold energy to go ahead and say, at least give me the Heat with the points, ended up prospering in that one. The other game, OKC, a blowout over New Orleans, man. This was the ugly side of New Orleans, wasn't it?
Yep.
New Orleans, I mean, you go to St. Peter's Square, right? You walk around New Orleans, a couple of things can happen, right? You make that right turn off St. Charles and you're on Bourbon Street. And what is the first thing that you see before you get to all of the history and all of the charm that is inherent of the city of New Orleans and all of the great food? The first thing you see, you're thinking, you know what? I should get a little cash here. We'll pay cash all the way around. When we stop in at 17 different bars and eat 300 dozen oysters and beignets and all of this stuff. And that first ATM machine that you come to when you make that turn, that right turn onto Bourbon Street, is always ensconced in vomit. But that's an image of the city that you don't often see portrayed when the Board of Tourism is encouraging you to come there and saying, look at all the wonderful things you can do, right? They got the guys holding hands in the little horse and carriage, and they got people eating and being charmed by musicians. They never show you that vomit-entrenched ATM machine, which is... I mean, it really is a legitimate sign of any trip to New Orleans. And that's what we saw from the Pelicans last night. Now, nobody expected much from them against the number 1 seed in the West, OKC. They put up a pretty good effort in game number 1, but that dissipated quickly in game 2 as the Zion Williamless New Orleans Pelicans tried to do battle with a team that some people feel actually has the goods. Young, but nonetheless has the goods to maybe go all the way, at least to the Western Conference Finals. 124-92, the final in that one. But that came under the heading of such ugliness. That was a hard game to watch. I had a bunch of hockey games last night. Boston beat Toronto 4-2. They take a 2-1 lead in the series. That was in Toronto. So a lot of Molson, I'm sure, was regurgitated last night as the Boston Bruins went to town and kind of offered a little redemption for the city of Beantown there with the win over the Toronto Maple Leafs. That was big. Vegas goes up 2-0 with 2 road wins over the Dallas Stars and the LA Kings in overtime. Very exciting game. This is a high-scoring series so far. The LA Kings over the Edmonton Oilers, 5-4 in overtime as the NHL playoffs continue to deliver. I mean, it's been just unbelievable. Got the draft today. Do you have your mock draft? Are you going to unveil it? We've been teasing people here in the morning briefing that Lubie's mock draft is forthcoming. What do you have for me? If you give me Caleb Williams at number 1, I'll let you stop right there. And
Yes,
we will give you the Mel Kiper Gargling with Moose Award for and Kiper. What pick? That's what I want to bet on tonight. I wonder if the Bet Online people offer this. Mel Kiper, at what point will his hair start standing up like Don King, where he is outraged by a selection that is made by somebody? What do you think?
Probably
How far do we
300.
go in the draft before somebody says, what the fuck are these guys thinking? No wonder this franchise is buried in misery for the last 20 years.
Wow.
Where's that going to happen?
I think the Patriots trade out of 3. So I don't know if he's predicting that or sees that. But to me, they're an utter disaster. One quarterback isn't going to change them. I think if they're smart, there's 4 quarterbacks teams want. Find a team that really wants one of the other 2 quarterbacks that are sitting there and trade that pick. That's the big move I see happening. The rest of it, I don't know. I mean, there's going to be a ton of receivers. I think some of them are going to get drafted higher than they should because they ran really fast in shorts, and that's not how football's played. So I think those guys will get overdrafted. I think J.J. McCarthy is the thing I'm most curious about. And Jaden Daniels. Look, Jaden Daniels to me is the end of the first round guy. He put up a lot of numbers in an SEC that was as bad defensively as it's been in years. And I think he's massively overrated. And I think him going in the top 3 is just flat out stupid, to be brutally honest. So we'll see how that shakes out. But it feels like Daniels 2, Williams 1. And then the Patriots are when I think the first questions start to arise.
I love draft blunders, by the way, and I'm hoping Dan Campbell is featured somehow during the course of the draft. It's interesting to see Roger Goodell kind of hanging out with Eminem. That's an odd thing. I mean, you think Roger Goodell, when he was in law school and about to get his degree and thinking about getting into the professional world, you think he ever pictured himself making $70 million a year while sitting next to some rapper from the 8 Mile area and acting like he needed to find a way to establish some street cred? That seems a little far-fetched, but then it was far-fetched to be having his arm around the guy that's head of DraftKings while he was sitting up there in the suite watching the Super Bowl. Or partners with Jay-Z or Snoop Dogg or any of the rappers that he's now so warmly embraced. But it'd be good if they allow Dan Campbell to at least have a cameo sometime during the first round where maybe he demonstrates his motivational methods and shows you how he got the Detroit Lions to be a highly regarded playoff team and a team that you think at least has somewhat of a bright future. If it wasn't for those stupid fucking blunders by Dan Campbell that he made while he was in the championship game against San Francisco. Run the ball, Danny. How about not going for 4th and 16 from your own 9? Well, this is how we got here. But that's how you're going to get buried also. You have to realize that. Nobody gets out of this thing alive. But it'd be nice if they just had him like eating a live wild boar. To motivate everybody and stimulate them to get excited about the first round of the playoffs, with the first 5 picks, in most people's opinion, being relatively a cinch. Although, as you suggested, Lubie, there's a possibility there'll be some kind of blockbuster trade in anticipation of Caleb Williams. He's 200 to 1 to be the number 1 pick. You have to bet $200 to win $1.
That's dumb.
Can you imagine? I mean, think about that. There was a guy, and we loved him out at Santa Anita many years ago, and it happens occasionally at other places. They call these guys phantom plungers, people that come to the track and bet like $50,000, $100,000 a show on a horse like Secretariat. And every now and then, I mean, think about how many times you have to win to make up for one loss, because you're only getting back 5 cents on the dollar in that situation. So if you bet $50,000, you're trying to win $2,500. And I'll never forget, I'm at Santa Anita one day. There was a horse called Lemhi Gold. Laz Barrera, who was the top trainer on the grounds at the time, and was suspected of maybe having a little bit of that Victor Conti juice that he was applying to some of these animals. Anyway, Lemhi Gold was a very classy individual, high price purchase horse. Everybody was waiting for this horse's debut. Debuts in a stakes race and romps at Santa Anita, sets a track record. I mean, you could see like fire behind this horse's footsteps or hoof steps. And it was amazing, right? So he comes back and just needs a tune-up race, runs against 5 other horses. The Phantom Plunger is there that day, puts $100,000 to show on Lemhi Gold. All of a sudden, the clouds open up. It never rains in Southern California, except when this guy's money was riding on a sure shot that had no chance to miss the board, except gets left in the gate, hustles all the way around the track, and then in a blanket 4-horse photo finish, ends up 4th. And you're seeing money bags flying out the window as the Phantom Plunger, all of a sudden, they call those guys bridge jumpers. Can you use that terminology anymore? But and this guy had to be ready to jump off the Golden Gate Bridge. Probably just drove right up to San Francisco and said, "This is the one. Stop right here, Whitey. Stop the car." I bet 100,000 a show on a horse that finished up fourth by a nose. But 200 to 1. So you would have to bet $2,000 to win 10. You'd have to bet $20,000 to win 100. $200,000 to win a dime, Lubie. Would you think about maybe taking $2 million, gathering up $2 million, Caleb Williams to be the number one pick? What could derail that? Can you think of anything?
No, nothing.
Nothing. Okay.
Yeah,
I mean, unless he doesn't make it to the draft, room in Detroit, there's no chance that anything else happens.
He's one.
No. All right. So you wouldn't bet $2 million to win 10,000, Lubie, if you had the opportunity? No. I mean, it's the easiest 10,000 a man can make.
It's automatic, but no.
I wait for the first mistake, though. And there are a lot of mistakes made at number 2. We saw Ryan Leaf, I guess, would be the classic example. Although I think the all-time greatest example, you got to do a little extrapolation here, and it's a little bit more abstract, was when the Miami Dolphins, after Alex Smith was taken by the 49ers, the Miami Dolphins had the number 2 pick. They had Gus Frerotte as their starting quarterback. It wasn't exactly exciting the city of South Florida, the area of South Florida, that Gus Frerotte was going to come back and start. Aaron Rodgers had gotten off the bus right behind Alex Smith and was widely anticipated to be the number 2 pick in the draft. They thought everybody thought it was going to be 1-2. They couldn't even figure out which one was going to go first. Most people thought Rodgers was going to be the guy. And what did the Dolphins do? Because they wanted to save money, Lubie. They take running back Ronnie Brown, who would have been the number 2 pick if you were taking the backfield at Auburn behind Cadillac Williams. And looms as one of the biggest blunders of all time, as they suffered for 20 years of mediocrity with a bunch of scrub quarterbacks that would have been lucky to find distinction if they were in the United Football League right now and playing for the Rock. And the other story that's out there, Reggie Bush gets his Heisman back.
Yes.
Of what significance was it that they took it away? That was kind of interesting. I mean, imagine if the criteria for the Heisman Trophy was that there had to be absolutely no insinuations or assertions that there was ever any kind of illegal inducement paid to any of the previous and or future Heisman Trophy winners. How many people would still have the Heisman? Nobody. They may as well just abandon giving out the award at that point. Now we know the Reggie Bush story is kind of interesting, and we've talked about it a few times, where Reggie Bush's parents supposedly were on the verge of being homeless, but somehow while Bush was playing at USC, they had the wherewithal to end up buying a horse that I think was trained by Bob Baffert and ran in the Del Mar Debutante. There they were down there in the paddock. That looks like Reggie Bush's parents right now with that $8 million nag. And so you're thinking, well, where did they get the money? Let's face it. There was something going on that wasn't exactly, and as we celebrate Passover, that wasn't exactly kosher. So I don't know who we were kidding by thinking that all of this stuff was on the level all of these other years and for all these other Heisman Trophy winners. But this was certainly a lot easier and a lot more beneficial to Reggie Bush. There seemed to be a celebration mood out there, and that this wrong was finally rectified. But compare that to what O.J. Simpson went through when he tried to get his Heisman Trophy back. Yeah. It wasn't even the actual Heisman. It was a rubber Heisman. This guy has to schlep to the Palace Station in Las Vegas, which is kind of a low-level hotel, well off the strip. They have a good buffet, though, for $4.99. I don't know if O.J. stopped there, but he did stop to pick up a weapon and ended up doing 9.5 years in prison for trying to get his Heisman Trophy back. A lot better ending to the story, a much happier ending with Reggie Bush. All right, a lot of stuff happening in the world of sport. The playoffs continue to roll on. NBA, great exciting action so far, triggered by the Miami Heat's improbable victory at 8-1 on the money line last night. More action on tap tonight, both the NBA and the NHL. And then tomorrow, at least, we'll have our. Can we count on you, Lubie, for your post-draft analysis?
Definitely ready.
All right, we'll do that. We got to run. Thanks so much for tuning in. For Mike Lubie Lubitz, I'm Jeff DeForest. We'll catch you tomorrow with a Degenerate Friday edition of the Morning Briefing.